Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and welcome to The Next Right Thing. Now, words have power, and with Lent approaching, Debbie and Adam are here to share some ways to prepare, improve, and of course, draw closer to God. Good morning, Debbie and Adam.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. Adam and I love doing the next right thing, especially when it's right before Lent. And we absolutely want to make the best of our Lenten experience this year. And so there's things that we can do together to start adjusting and changing and improving our lives to get ready to have that disposition for Lent, the mindset, the intention of going into Lent, knowing that we want to get closer to God. And one of those things that we want to discuss today on The Next Right Thing is the fact that words are very powerful. The words that we hear, the words that we tell ourselves, the words that we use. And so we want to address that. And Adam, I'd love for you to begin.
Yeah, so, when you study psychology and study to be a therapist, one of the areas that inevitably everybody spends time on is cognitive behavioral therapy because it's so effective and it works pretty quickly, so insurance companies like it. It's just very popular. And the cognitive side of that is largely about self-talk, right? So kind of our inner monologue or inner dialogue with ourselves, we talk to ourselves in our mind all the time, is very powerful. And when we try to take charge of it and shift it to something more positive, that's a big chunk of what cognitive behavioral therapy is about, because a lot of people that are coming in for therapy, if it's, it's not a brain imbalance, but it's maybe came from, their environment, that type of thing, they have become so mired in negative self-talk. Oh, I'm worthless, I can't do anything right, or, I'm going to fail at this again, I'm helpless to succeed. It's often absolutes, so I never do anything right. The word never is really irrational, and it makes you feel defeated because it's the idea that literally never. I'm helpless to do anything about it.
Words, yes. Go right ahead.
And so the words that we say to ourselves have a huge impact on us, and we know that from cognitive behavioral therapy. We know that changing our self-talk is incredibly impactful. Well, imagine what your words' impact is on other people, particularly people that are close to you, that maybe rely on you or see you as, somebody who kind of has things together or has figured out a way to succeed in life. The words that you say to other people are equally, sometimes more powerful in terms of their impact on them. So during this Lent, we want to look at the words we're saying to ourselves, look for the absolute statements, always, never, and the spiritual versions of these things, like, oh, I'm never going to stop this sin, or I'm never going to overcome that, or Jesus is never going to forgive me, he's lost patience with me, he gave up on me. All these kind of, it applies in the spiritual too, and it can be very kind of self-defeating.
I so agree with you, Adam. You got me rolling on this because you're talking about these absolute words, these extreme words. Think about it. These are relationship killers, you guys. When we say to our spouse, you never take out the garbage. Now, is that a fair statement to say? What about the few times they did take out the garbage? They have nowhere to go with that. You box them in, you push them to the wall, you totally remove them from them being a partner and a friend to you and a soulmate to you. You put them as almost an enemy when you use these extreme words. They are relationship killers. They don't work. Always, never. I mean, it's so, like you said, Adam, it's so definite, and it positions the person with no room for growth. And then also, it almost always ends up in a debate or an argument, because that person has to be put into the defensive field of trying to defend themselves, saying, well, wait a minute, a month ago I did take out the garbage. Do I get any credit for that? And before you know it, it starts rolling and it's spiraling, and it tears apart relationships. And those same kinds of words and those things we tell ourselves, the self-talk that Adam was talking about, and the things that we share with others, believe me, Scripture tells it and reinforces it and tells us to worry about it and be careful. Those words can cut. Those words can kill. Those words can destroy our own soul and can hurt other people's souls. And Adam, this is what I understand to be true. We're going to be held accountable for that. The Lord's going to say, we had the choice to open our mouth or not open our mouth, right?
Oh, absolutely. And so many saints, encourage us to watch what we put in our senses, but also watch what we put out to other people's senses. There's so many references to, when in doubt, it's better to be silent. Pause and think before speaking, before reacting, is almost never a bad idea. There's, of course, some circumstances you need to react quickly, sure. There's crises and things like that. But words are really powerful. And there's a subset of words, too, that I think it's worth mentioning, and that is really ugly words. So, like profanity, we're not going to say any of them, but everybody can imagine them.
General cussing is what you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, so these words really wound us psychologically, emotionally, for real. They really do, because what they do is they elicit a fear or a disgust reaction in your nervous system.
Interesting.
Because if you think of those words, invariably, they are words that are referencing something vile or something violating. And if you go through it in your mind and
yes,
go down
the
list, they're always something either repugnant or something violating and violent. And so
usually sexual in nature too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we use those words, whether we realize it or not, when those words are coming into our mind, they're creating this kind of recoiling, pullback and disgust or fear reaction in us, just a little bit emotionally. And that has an impact. You do that 1,000 times in a month, it's going to be impacting the person's emotional state. It's going to be impacting their mind and their world.
But Adam, can I ask you a question? I've heard people say, well, it doesn't bother me. Can they get desensitized?
Yes, you can, but it is still impacting you.
Okay. So whether subconsciously, you're okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
I would argue that it's still impacting you because essentially these are things that are hardwired into us on an evolutionary level, meaning they're hardwired into our nervous system. And so if you consciously decide to ignore it or let it roll off, that's fine. You're kind of cognitively convincing yourself that's true, but the body is still reacting. So let me give you a concrete example of that. As I've mentioned a number of times, I worked in the state prisons and psychological services for a number of years in my state here, in 2 different institutions. Now, in those institutions, you are hearing awful language all the time. You're being yelled at on a regular basis. Awful things are being yelled at you in many cases. You're overhearing awful, threatening language and seeing violence, of course, sometimes too. Now, one would probably say after 6 months or a year working in there, you're used to it, right? You're desensitized. What about after 5 years of working in there? You'd say okay, you got to be desensitized by then. You're just used to it. It doesn't bother you anymore, right? And actually, when you work in those places, at least in this state, you retire at age 50 instead of 60 or 65 because the actuarial tables show that you die 10 years earlier.
Wow.
From the wear and tear of the stress on your body.
Wow.
And so people that say it doesn't bother me, I'm desensitized to it, cognitively you've kind of built up a thick skin, but it's still affecting your body. And we know that from the fact that when you work in an environment 8 hours a day filled with this stuff, you die 10 years earlier.
Ooh, that really hit me hard because you don't think about that. That's not something you when you're just trying to live life, you're not thinking, I'm actually destroying myself. I'm causing myself to go into an earlier death.
Oh, yeah.
Right? By allowing this kind of stuff to enter into my mind. Wow. Adam, and I just wanted to share I did a quick search so folks can do this. This is your homework for today, but just go into the Bible. We talked about how scripture states this and reinforces it and cautions us. I mean, in Proverbs, in Ephesians, in Matthew, I mean, it goes on and on. In Proverbs 18:21, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. You talked about, staying silent, choosing your words wisely, responding, not reacting. Ephesians talks about it. Matthew, listen to this one, Matthew 12:36, verse 36-37. But I tell you that men will have to give account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. Mm-hmm. Here we go. It's right there in the Bible. And there's other Bible verses too in Psalms and in Hebrews and in John and Colossians and Luke. It goes on and on. The Bible is clear and says it many times. But yet we so freely speak and we put it out there and we're like, oh, well, I said it. Okay. And we have to really watch what we do put out there into the world by way of communication and interactions with other souls, plus what we tell ourselves. You started this with self-talk, Adam, and that's mainly the majority of our clients that come to us for Stand Tall, they do have some negative self-talk, and that's a problem. You want to clean that up, especially going into this season of Lent. So, Adam, let's hold it there. When we come back, you know how I love this because this is right up the life coaching alley and the work that we do in our outreach ministry. So, when we come back, more about words are powerful. Let's listen to.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And real quick announcements for those maybe looking to do something, maybe go on vacation this August. Catholic Spirit Radio is hosting an incredible pilgrimage over to Mother Angelica's Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament, and that's in Hanceville, Alabama. And so it's a 4-day excursion. My goodness, it looks very exciting. For more information on all details, you can go to CatholicSpiritsRadio.com. So make sure to check that out, especially if you're looking to visit. We visited, Guadalupe Radio Network, the Most Blessed Sacrament, and it was incredible. This was in October. It really is a pilgrimage site, and I still can't get over the church inside, the interior. It is so beautiful. I don't have enough time to explain myself. But coming up next, because words have power, right? We're continuing this conversation with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly here on Morning Joy, where truth matters. We'll see you right after this break.
Listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and we are continuing on the final segment of this morning's The Next Right Thing with Debbie and Adam, talking about words having power. Without further ado, Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Thank you so much, Keith. And Adam, I'd love for you to continue to really help us to clean up our vocabulary and what we tell ourselves and what we tell others. And I loved how you said, please don't be so quick to speak. And actually, we're going to talk more about that later in some of the Next Right Thing segments. We're going to talk about really being a very good listener, like Saint Joseph and the Blessed Mother, really observing well.
There's a special case of a misuse of words. That's actually a commandment that a lot of us forget, or it's easy to forget. I mean, I don't, but I've been around so much where I take it very seriously. And I'm not saying, I'm not faulting people. myself, but I'm telling you that God is faulting you, because it's an actual commandment. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. So this is a reference to the fact, you were reading some scripture passages, which they're very true, and it is very important. But when it comes to the name of Jesus Christ, when it comes to the name of God, it's actually a commandment. So that lets us know that certain words are a real big deal to God in how we use them.
Right.
And so this Lent, it's an opportunity, if you have a bad habit of using the Lord's name in vain, of using the Lord's name as an expletive, as, a form of cursing. This is a real good opportunity to stop doing that. Find a way to stop doing that. Get to confession about that.
Yeah, we both said it at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a mortal sin. Like, think about that. Other mortal sins, like you shall not kill. Like, this is in that same list. It's a big deal. So we want to consider that. One of the
Adam,
ahead.
can I ask you a question about that? Lately, I noticed, and it's gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. You would think that the Hollywood industry would know this by now, that so many of us Christians are so turned off by this. It's so it hits us so deeply that we just cannot stand it when we hear the Lord's name being taken in vain, casually in these movies. And some of the movies are PG-13 rated, so they're not like really horror movies or anything like that. What are we to do? I've always struggled with this, and I really want to ask you this question. What are we to do when we go to the movie theater and it's just out there in the storyline, and the actors are saying these things, and they're taking the Lord's name in vain, and then they're adding even additional cuss words to that, and it makes it even more repulsive, and it's just horrible, and it's blasphemous, and such a disrespect to our Lord. What are we to do? Are we to walk out of the movie theater? Are we to just to ignore it? And let me be really clear. Some of these movies that I've seen have Catholic actors in them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're asking a really good question. I don't think there's a one-fits-all answer to that. I think at the end of the day, if you really reflected on how that is a mortal sin and how insulting it is to Jesus, but then how it's normalizing that mortal sin and making,
right,
by putting it on the big screen. We know movies have huge impacts on culture. We know that down through history, since movies have been around. And so if you see, that's the reason they removed smoking, basically from movies and TV, because they knew it encouraged smoking. And as we figured out that smoking's bad, we removed it from there because it encourages people to pick up that habit. So when you're cursing and using the Lord's name in vain in a movie, you're normalizing it for people. You're encouraging them to do the same. So if you're being a willing witness to a mortal sin and the encouragement of mortal sin to be spread to other people in the community, can you really stay? At the end of the day, if you really thought all that through, I don't think you can. I think you have to. You have to leave.
Right. Well, Adam, here's what I don't understand, and I'm not trying to be critical of any of the Hollywood actors that are out there being really good Catholics for all of us on these various platforms and apps, and they support Catholic radio and TV, and I think it's wonderful. And from what we can tell, they're really good, practicing, wonderful Catholics. But why couldn't they're top Hollywood stars? Why couldn't they say to the producers, I'm going to do this movie. I'll sign on for this movie, but I noticed there's 2 areas there where you take the Lord's name in vain. I want that pulled out of the script. Okay, it's no different than when a Hollywood actor says they're not going to take their clothes off for a certain scene. And the producers still sign them on, still pay them the millions of dollars, and they get to rewrite the script. Why aren't these Hollywood actors speaking up? It's become like a game that I play with my husband. Every time we turn on a movie, I say, let's hit the clock. How many minutes is it going to be before they take the Lord's name in vain? And I can tell you, and if anybody else wants to do this, because this is the way I work with these exercises and different things to try and learn things, within 10 to 15 minutes of the movie starting, somebody takes the Lord's name in vain. Isn't that, and so then the rest of the movie, I feel guilty while the rest of the movie, because it's so, why can't we, I mean, is there anything, I think we should reach out to these Hollywood actors that are Catholic, practice Catholics, and say, please, would you just say you want that removed from the script?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Certainly, I mean, we're all just human beings. Actors aren't gods. They're doing it, they're going to work and doing a job, and if they have enough leverage to get millions of dollars for a role, you would think, as you said, they can say they won't take their clothes off, and that seems to be respected.
Yeah, it does.
So why can't they put their foot down about other things? I don't know. I can tell you it seems that Christianity is the one religion that you can insult
and get away
publicly,
with it.
And it's not considered a hate crime.
Yep.
So you can mock and insult Christianity for some reason, yet if you even get close to mocking or insulting other religions, you get brought up on hate crime charges. So
Right.
I don't know what that dynamic's about.
Well, maybe we could start something in here. Maybe there's somebody listening right now. Maybe there's a Hollywood actor listening right now that maybe could get this changed, for the rest of us, because maybe they would have more movie goers and more sales. Because honestly, at this point, we probably can never go to see another movie again because it's there. It's always there pretty much in every movie script. Okay, Adam, I'm so sorry. You had more to say with this Next Right Thing, but God willing, we will be back for another The Next Right Thing. So any final comments before we send it back to Keith?
I guess the last one, to get back to the positive, Deb, is when you've got internal conflicts that you're wrestling with in Lent, things that you've struggled with or you feel helpless to overcome, saying it with a close friend or a spiritual advisor, saying it out loud often takes its power away from dominating us. So when you admit, I've got a real problem with this, and I need some help because I feel helpless in dealing with it, by saying it out loud, it often deflates it and takes away a lot of its power. When we keep it a secret, it often grows bigger and bigger and bigger in our mind and stronger. And that's why therapy, just the act of talking things through with somebody that isn't going to judge you and is going to listen, is so powerful. And so, on a positive sense, sharing our words is also something really good.
Amazing. Okay, and that's why you can get a free consultation at standtalltoday.com if you want some life coaching. Just thought I'd mention that. So now we'll send it back for the rest of Morning Joy with Keith Downey.
Wow, thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And make sure to tune in each Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central for the Spirit World. That's with Debbie and Adam. And if you happen to miss this last Saturday's episode, just make sure you tap into it, because they essentially helped us all prepare for Lent with a plan. You always want to have a plan. So make sure to catch that, either listen or watch it. Just search the Spirit World podcast or just the Spirit World. And speaking of the Spirit World, this weekend, Debbie and Adam are going to be interviewing Bishop William Walterscheid about what makes a saint. It's really perfect timing considering Pope Francis just signed some causes for sainthood decrees. So very exciting stuff. But hey, coming up next, how do we improve our minds according to St. Thomas Aquinas? Dave Palmer's coming up next on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.